Have you ever felt drawn to someone who was completely outside your plans? Someone who could unexpectedly stir something profound within you? I asked myself that question hundreds of times before that night. And today you'll understand what that reveals about yourself. My name is Lucas, I'm 26 years old and I work as a graphic designer in Los Angeles. I've always been that guy who considered himself secure in his own identity, you know? I had my circle of friends, my career goals, my relationships with women that always followed a comfortable and predictable pattern. I was the type of person who believed he had everything under control, who knew exactly who he was, until I met Raphael. Raphael was a friend of a cousin of mine. The first time I saw him was at a family barbecue. He carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what he wanted in life. Impeccably groomed with well-cut hair and a trimmed beard, he had a presence that, I admit, left me slightly unsettled. It wasn't aggressive or intimidating, just different, and magnetic energy that naturally drew people's attention when he spoke. And I, without fully understanding why, was no exception. In the following months, we started seeing each other more frequently. Catching games at sports bars with friends, happy hour after work, those casual hangouts that happen when you have mutual friends. And every time we met, I felt something strange in my chest. An uneasiness I couldn't name. You know when you try to ignore a feeling because it doesn't make sense? That was exactly it. I found my thoughts drifting to him at the most unexpected times. During a work meeting, while designing a logo, my mind would unexpectedly replay a joke from our last get-together. Or I'd recall the way he laughed, head thrown back, genuinely and unabashedly amused. This caught me off guard because I had never experienced such feelings before, especially not towards a man. I started questioning every interaction of ours. Was I reading signs where there was nothing? Did that longer hug after a few beers mean something, or was it just genuine friendship? The mental confusion was intense, because recognizing this attraction meant confronting everything I thought I knew about myself. And that, I can assure you, is absolutely terrifying. There was a night when everything started to become clearer. Not clear in the sense of resolved, but clear in the sense that I could no longer pretend it didn't exist. It was an ordinary Friday. We had arranged to catch the game at the bar near my apartment. Some friends bailed at the last minute, and it ended up being just the two of us. We spent hours talking about everything. Career dreams, past relationships, family. Those deep conversations you only have when a few drinks make vulnerability easier. At a certain point, he talked about his ex-girlfriend, about how the relationship had ended because he felt he couldn't be completely honest with her about some aspects of his life. He didn't go into details, but there was something in the way he said it. A pause, a look, something that made my heart race. I wanted to ask more, but I was afraid that if I asked, he would realize what I was feeling, and I wasn't ready for that yet. The bar closed around midnight. When we left, he asked if I could give him a ride home. His car was in the shop. Of course, I said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. But inside, my stomach was churning, because suddenly, the night wasn't ending. We would be alone, in my car, for at least 20 minutes to his place. We got in the car, and the silence that settled wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged. You know those silences that say more than any words could? That was exactly it. I drove trying to seem casual, but my hands were sweating on the steering wheel. He was fiddling with his phone absent-mindedly, but I felt he was also aware of that invisible tension that filled the space between us. A few blocks from his place, he broke the silence. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," I said, trying to sound calm. "Have you ever felt something you didn't expect to feel? Like something that caught you completely by surprise and you didn't know what to do with it?" My heart raced. I knew that question wasn't random, but at the same time, I was afraid of misinterpreting, of responding in a way that would expose everything I had been trying to hide. "Yes," I replied, choosing my words carefully. "I think everyone has felt that way at some point." He smiled, but it wasn't an amused smile. It was a nervous smile, the kind you give when you're about to say something important and still don't know if you should. "It's just that I've been feeling something lately, and I don't really know how to deal with it." I stopped the car in front of his building. I turned off the engine, and for the first time that night, I looked directly into his eyes. And what I saw there removed any doubt that might still exist. He felt the same way I did. "Want to come up to talk?" he asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. I should have said no, should have made up some excuse. That it was late, that I had something the next day, anything. But I didn't say any of that, because in that moment, for the first time in months, I didn't want to run away from what I was feeling anymore. "Yes," I said, just that. A simple word that carried the weight of all the confusion, fears, and desires I had kept until then. We got out of the car in silence. We walked to the elevator without exchanging a word. The hallway to his apartment seemed to last forever. Every step was a choice. With each passing second, I had the chance to turn back, to go downstairs, to get in the car and leave. But I didn't do that, because deep down, I knew that if I didn't walk through that door, I would spend the rest of my life wondering, what if? He opened the apartment door and flicked on the living room light. A simple, masculine space with minimal but well-chosen furniture. He went to the kitchen and offered water. I accepted, more for the extra time than actual thirst. I needed a few seconds to process what was happening, to prepare myself for whatever was coming next. We sat on the couch. The distance between us was calculated. Not too far to seem cold, not too close to seem desperate. He held the glass of water with both hands, looking down. And then he started to speak. I've never told this to anyone before, but I think you'll understand. Or at least I hope you will. I nodded, unable to say anything. My throat was dry despite the water. I spent years trying to understand what I feel, trying to fit my feelings into boxes that made sense to everyone. But the more I tried, the more I realized that I can't do that anymore. He paused, took a deep breath, and then, for the first time, he looked directly at me. I'm attracted to you, Lucas. And it's not just a friend's admiration. It's something more. Something I tried to ignore but can't anymore. The world stopped. Literally, I felt as if time had frozen in that moment. All the internal conversations I had with myself, all the doubts, all the fears, everything came to the surface at once, and along with that came an inexplicable relief. Because I wasn't alone. Because what I felt wasn't one-sided. Because for the first time, I didn't need to pretend anymore. Me too, I said, and those two words came out with surprising ease. I feel this too. He smiled. A genuine smile, relieved, almost disbelieving. Really? Really? I've been confused for months, trying to understand what this was that I felt every time we saw each other. And now I know. We stayed there, sitting on the couch, just looking at each other. There was no rush. There was no need to do anything other than be there, in that moment, acknowledging what existed between us. It was strange and familiar at the same time, frightening and liberating. A contradiction that made perfect sense in that context. He reached out his hand and touched mine. A gentle touch, testing, asking without words if everything was okay. I didn't pull back. Instead, I intertwined my fingers with his, and in that simple gesture, there was a silent promise. Of honesty, of vulnerability, of courage to explore something that neither of us fully understood yet. Really? He repeated, almost questioning. I don't know. I don't know what this means, he said. I don't know what we are or what's going to happen. But I know I don't want to pretend this doesn't exist anymore. Me neither, I replied. And there, in that silent apartment, while the city continued its rhythm outside, the two of us began to accept something that had been hidden for far too long. There were no ready answers. There was no manual on how to deal with that. But there was something real, something that deserved to be explored, even with all the fear and uncertainty that came with it. I told myself I would stay just a few minutes, that we would talk, put our cards on the table, and each would go our own way to process all of that. But I didn't know that decision to enter. Those few minutes that would turn into hours would change everything. Completely. When the apartment door closed behind us, the silence was almost deafening. That kind of silence that screams everything you're not saying. I stood there, standing in the middle of the living room, looking at anything but him. The bookshelf, the worn leather couch, the window overlooking the still busy street below. Want to sit? His voice was softer now. Tired, perhaps. Or just real. Without that armor we wear when we're in front of other people. I sat on the edge of the couch. He went to the kitchen and came back with 2 bottles of water. When he handed me one, our fingers touched for half a second. And I swear I felt that touch echo through my entire body, as if every nerve ending had woken up at once. Sorry for dragging you here, he said, sitting next to me. Not too close, but not far either. That calculated distance of someone who's trying to be respectful but dying to close the gap. I just couldn't keep pretending there anymore. Pretending what? He laughed, a short laugh, without humor. That everything's normal. That I can be around you and act like nothing is happening. My heart raced, because I knew exactly what he was talking about. That tension that had been growing between us for weeks. Those looks that lasted half a second longer than normal. The conversations that started about work and ended at 3 in the morning. Talking about dreams and fears and things we had never shared with anyone. What do you think is happening? I asked, and my voice came out hoarser than I intended. He looked at me, really looked at me, in that way that makes you feel like you're being seen for the first time in your life. You know what's happening. I know you know. And I knew. Of course I knew. But hearing it out loud was different. It transformed what had been safe in the territory of the unspoken into something concrete. Real. Impossible to ignore. I started, but the words died in my throat. How could I admit something like that? How could I say out loud that I was feeling things I shouldn't be feeling? For someone who, by all rational accounts, was completely outside my plans, He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Look, I'm not asking for anything. I'm not expecting you to feel the same way. I just need to be honest, because this lie is killing me. What lie? Pretending that you're just my friend. He turned his face toward me, and there was so much vulnerability in those eyes that I could barely hold his gaze. Pretending that I don't think about you all the time. That I don't make up excuses to see you. That I don't wake up in the middle of the night thinking about what it would be like if... He stopped, swallowed hard. And in that silence, all the air between us seemed to electrify. If what? I whispered. If I could kiss you. The world stopped. I swear it stopped. I could hear my own heart beating, the sound of traffic outside, his breathing so close. And all I could think was, he just said that. He just said it out loud. I'm not saying you feel this too, he continued quickly, as if he needed to fill the silence before I ran away. But if you do, I just want you to know there's nothing wrong with it and that I understand. I understand the fear, the confusion, everything, because I feel it too. My mind was in turmoil, because every logical fiber of my being was screaming that this was crazy. That I should get up, thank him for his honesty, and leave before things got even more complicated. That there were 1,000 reasons why this couldn't happen. But there was a quieter voice, a deeper one, that was saying something completely different. A voice I had been trying to muffle for weeks. And that voice was saying, finally someone is feeling what I feel. Finally, I'm not alone in this. I tried again, and this time the words came out. I think about you too, all the time, and it scares me because it's not supposed to be like this. He let out his breath, as if he'd been holding it this whole time. We sat there, looking at each other, and the silence was different now. It was no longer uncomfortable or charged with unresolved tension. It was expectation, possibility. The kind of silence that comes before everything changes. What do we do now? I asked. He gave a half smile, sad but also hopeful. I don't know. I never thought I'd actually get this far. I laughed, a low, genuine laugh that dissolved some of the tension. You confess your feelings without having a plan? Apparently, he said with a hint of self-deprecating humor. And then he did something I didn't expect. He reached out and took my hand. Just that. Just intertwined his fingers with mine, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it was. Maybe it was exactly what should have been happening for weeks. We can take it slow, he said softly. You don't have to decide anything now. Just don't lie to yourself. I spent too much time lying to myself about what I felt, and it only made me unhappy. I looked at our intertwined hands, at his fingers wrapping around mine with a gentleness that made my chest tighten. And I realized I was tired. Tired of fighting against something that, deep down, I wanted. Tired of inventing reasons why this was wrong when the only thing that felt right in that moment was exactly where I was. I'm not lying, I whispered. Not anymore. He squeezed my hand, and we stayed like that. Minutes passed. I don't know how many. Time had completely lost its meaning. There was only that moment, that room, that connection that was finally being acknowledged. At some point we started talking again, but now it was different. No filters, no fear. He told me about the first time he realized he felt something more. It was on an ordinary day, he said. We were having coffee, complaining about work, and I laughed at something stupid he said. I told him about the night I stayed awake until 4 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand why my heart would race every time he sent me a message, trying to make sense of feelings that defied all logical explanation. You stayed awake thinking about me? He asked, and there was something vulnerable and hopeful in his voice. Many nights. Me too. I thought I was going crazy. Maybe we are, I said, going crazy together. I think I'd rather be this way than sane alone. And it was in that moment I realized how close we were. At some point in the conversation, the distance between us had shrunk, not on purpose, but naturally, as if our bodies were responding to something our minds had finally accepted. He lifted his free hand and very slowly touched my face, just his fingertips tracing the line of my jaw. A touch so light it could have been imaginary, but it wasn't. It was real. It was happening. Can I kiss you? He whispered. My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. All the reasons why I should say no flashed through my mind in an instant. And then they passed, because none of them mattered more than that moment. None of them were stronger than the truth of what I was feeling. You can. And that's how it was, unhurried. A calm kiss, full of truth. His lips touched mine with a gentleness that made tears sting my eyes. It wasn't ardent or desperate. It was right, it fit. As if it were something that should have happened long ago and was finally finding its place in the universe. When we separated, he rested his forehead against mine, both of us breathing a little faster, both still processing what had just happened. I began. I know. We stayed like that, foreheads touching, hands still intertwined, breaths mingling, And for the first time in weeks, that knot in my chest began to loosen. Because I wasn't fighting anymore. I wasn't resisting anymore. I was just being. But then, like all good things, reality began to seep back in. Slowly, yet inexorably. Like water trickling through an invisible fissure. I pulled back a little, and he felt the change immediately. I saw it in his eyes. "What is it?" he asked. "Nothing, I took a deep breath. What did we just do?" He was quiet for a moment, then let out a long sigh. Something that should have happened ages ago. Or something that perhaps should never have happened. It all depends on how you choose to see it. And how are you looking at it? As the best and scariest decision I've ever made. He squeezed my hand again as if afraid I would leave. And you? Honestly, I don't know. Because part of me was screaming with happiness. That part that had secretly wanted this for so long had finally gotten it. But there was another part, the practical part. The part that thought about consequences, that was starting to panic. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Me too. What if this ruins everything? Our friendship, our work, our... What if it doesn't?" He interrupted gently. "What if this is exactly what should happen?" But also, for the first time in a long time, I felt something beyond fear. I felt hope. "I don't know what comes next," I said quietly. "Neither do I, but..." He hesitated, then continued. "Can we figure it out together?" And in that moment, with the taste of him still on my lips, and his touch still burning on my skin, with fear and hope fighting inside my chest, I realized something. I had a choice. I could let fear win and spend the rest of my life wondering, what if? Or I could be brave. I could let it happen. I squeezed his hand back, together. But even as I said it, even as he smiled in that way that made my heart squeeze, I could feel the storm forming on the horizon. Because some things, once you start them, you can't simply undo. Some thresholds once crossed can never be uncrossed. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about myself began to shatter, and I had no idea what would come next. But everything changed the next morning. I woke up before Raphael. Sunlight was streaming through the window, illuminating his face as he slept. And it was in that moment, looking at him so peaceful, that I felt a tightness in my chest. Not from guilt, not from fear, but from something I had never felt before. A strange and comforting certainty at the same time. I was in love. It wasn't confusion anymore. It wasn't just attraction or curiosity anymore. It was love, real, deep, and completely unexpected. When he woke up, his eyes found mine immediately, and he smiled. That smile that said, "I know exactly what you're feeling because I'm feeling it too." "Good morning," he said, his voice hoarse with sleep. "Good morning," I replied, and my voice came out weaker than I expected. We stayed there, just looking at each other, and it was he who broke the silence. "We need to talk about this, right?" My heart raced. The conversation about what this meant, what would happen next, how this would change everything. "We do," I agreed. Raphael sat on the bed, running his hand through his hair. I sat down too, still processing everything that had happened. And suddenly, all that vulnerability from the night before came back, but in a different way. It wasn't about desire anymore. It was about the future. "I don't want you to think this was just an impulsive moment for me," he began, looking directly into my eyes. "Because it wasn't. I've been feeling this for a long time, Lucas. And it's not just attraction. It's you, the person you are. The way you understand me without me needing to explain. The way you make me feel alive." I felt my eyes burning. "Me too," I whispered. "I've been feeling this for a long time too." He took my hand, intertwining our fingers. "So we need to decide what we're going to do about this," he said. And there was a seriousness in his voice that scared and comforted me at the same time. "What do you mean?" "This isn't a secret we can keep forever, Lucas. And I don't want to keep it. I don't want to hide you. I don't want to pretend you're just my friend when you're so much more than that to me." My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my temples. "But what about our friends? And our families, everyone? They'll say it's wrong. That it's weird. That..." "I know," he interrupted me, but his voice was calm. "I know what they'll say, and it's going to be hard. But the question that matters is, what do you want?" What did I want? I looked at the man in front of me. The man who had become an essential part of my life without me realizing it. Who made me laugh like no one else. Who understood me without needing explanations. And who was now something completely different. Someone I loved in a way I had never loved anyone. "I want you," I answered, and my voice came out firm for the first time. "I want this. I want us." The smile that formed on Raphael's face was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. "Then that's it," he said. "We'll face this together." And that was it. In that moment, that morning, everything truly changed. It wasn't easy. When I told my best friend, he was silent for long minutes. I was holding my beer glass so tightly that my fingers hurt. My heart was in my throat. "Dude, I don't know what to say," he began, and I saw the confusion in his eyes. "You too? Really?" "Really," I replied, my voice barely coming out. I know it seems crazy, but it's real. More silence, and then he sighed. Look, it's going to be weird as hell at first, but if this is what you want, if this is what makes you happy, who am I to judge? That was the beginning. Telling my parents was even harder. My mother cried. Not out of sadness, she later explained, but out of fear. Fear of what people would say. Fear of how the world would treat her son. Mom, I understand the fear, I said, holding her hand. But for the first time in my life, I'm being honest with myself. And that has to count for something. My father stayed quiet for days. He didn't talk about it, didn't ask anything. Until one night, he called me to talk. I'm not going to lie and say I understand, he said, his voice tired. Because I don't understand. But you're my son, and I love you. And if this guy makes you happy, if he treats you well, then I'll try to accept it. It wasn't the warm embrace I wanted, but it was a beginning, and it was more than I expected. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Some friends distanced themselves, others got even closer. At work, some colleagues whispered when I walked by, but others came to talk, genuinely curious, genuinely respectful. And through all of this, Raphael was there. Steady, patient, never doubting, never pressuring me. Just being present. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it, I confided one night, after enduring a particularly rough day filled with whispered comments at the office. He pulled me close, kissing my forehead. It's worth it, he said simply. Every difficult second is worth it, because at the end of the day, we have the truth, and no one can take that away from us. And he was right. Today, 2 years later, we're living together. It wasn't easy getting here. There were tears, fights, moments of doubt, but there was also a lot of love, a lot of growth, a lot of learning about who I really am. I learned that identity isn't something fixed, that you can spend 26 years thinking you know who you are, and suddenly discover a part of yourself that was hidden all along. And that's not a betrayal of who you were. It's just evolution. It's discovery. I learned that courage isn't not being afraid. It's being afraid and doing it anyway. It's waking up every day and choosing to be authentic, even when the world tries to push you back into the closet. And I learned that love, true love, transcends expectations and labels. It doesn't conform to predefined boundaries or societal plans. Love simply arrives, unbidden and profound. And when it does, it has the power to reshape everything. My parents now come over for dinner. They talk to Raphael about sports, work, life. It's not perfect. There are still moments of tension. But there's also acceptance. There's love. And in the end, that's what matters. Of course, there are still those who raise their eyebrows when they discover our story. There are still those who make comments. But I don't care anymore, because I know what we have. And I know it's real. Raphael taught me that happiness doesn't require having everything perfectly mapped out. Sometimes true courage means embracing the confusion, leaning into uncertainty. It's about declaring, I may not know exactly who I am, but I know exactly what I feel. And that clarity is enough. And it was enough. Every tear, every difficult conversation, every judgmental look was worth it. 'Cause I found my place. I found my person. And I found myself in the process. So if you're watching this and have ever felt attracted to someone who, theoretically, was completely outside your plans, someone society would say is wrong, I want you to know something. You're not alone. I've been exactly where you are, feeling that confusion, that fear, that guilt mixed with desire and hope. And I can tell you there's nothing wrong with what you're feeling. Love is unpredictable. It doesn't ask permission. It simply arrives. And when it truly arrives, it transforms everything. But I'm telling you that if you're feeling something real, something deep, something that makes you question everything you thought you knew about yourself, it's worth exploring. Because self-deception is the cruelest prison imaginable. Living an entire lifetime, suppressing who you truly are, silencing what you genuinely feel, is the ultimate betrayal of your most precious gift, your authentic self. So be brave. And if you've been through something similar, if you've had that moment that changed everything, share it here in the comments. Because stories like these need to be told. They remind us that we're not alone, that love, in all its forms, deserves to be celebrated. And if you liked this video, if it touched you in some way, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future content. Because here we talk about real love, the kind that transforms, the kind that liberates, the kind that makes you truly alive. Until next time, my community. And remember, love has a way of arriving unannounced, in the moments and places we least anticipate. And when it truly arrives, it transforms everything.